subtracting fractions. By the end of the lesson, I will be able to subtract fractions. Fractions must have common denominators when you are subtracting them. Same thing as adding. Adding and subtracting fractions have to have common denominators. Subtracting fractions, the first thing that you're going to do is find a common denominator. You're going to change the numerator by the same multiple the denominator was changed by. You're going to subtract the numerators, and then you're going to keep the denominators. I hope that this looks almost identical to adding fractions. To find the least common multiple, we are going to use the cake. The least common multiple, or the LCM, will allow us to find a common denominator. If our denominators are already the same, we will just subtract the numerators. Again, this should look very similar to adding fractions. So to find each difference, we're going to subtract, but really in our minds, we're going to see who wins on Integer Hill. When, we have to think back, when we see subtraction, we have to change subtraction to addition, and the guy to the right is a SPY. So the guy to the right, I always give my negative to the numerator. The guy to the right is negative. So I'm going to do the same process that I did. I'm going to find a common denominator by using the cake. When there is no factor, I put an X because I'm going to multiply 3 times 5 to get 15. 15 is my least common multiple. It's also my common denominator. So I'm going to write out my fractions. And I know that 15 has to be my common denominator. So what times 5 and what times 3 is going to get me to 15? 3 times 5 is going to get me to 15, so I need to multiply the numerator by the same number that I multiplied the denominator by. In the second fraction, 5 times 3 is going to get me to 15, so I'm going to multiply -2 times 3 to get my new numerator. In the first one, 5 times 5 is 25, and in the second one, -2 times 3 is -6. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask myself, who is going to win? If I have 25/15 versus -6/15, I hope you say that positives are going to win, and they're going to win by 19/15. The only numbers that are fighting, the only integers that are fighting are the numerator. The denominator is going to stay the same. So in number 8, I'm going to use the cake. Oh, but first, I see a SPY. I have to change my subtraction to addition, and the guy to the right is a SPY. So I have to add the opposite, is what I'm doing. I'm going to figure out my least common multiple, and there are no factors, so I'm going to multiply to get 28. So my common denominator is going to be 28. So I have 7/4 and I have -6/7. My common denominator is going to be 28. And what am I going to multiply my first fraction by is 7. So 7 times 7 is 49. And my second fraction, I'm going to multiply by 4, because 7 times 4 is 28. And -6 times 4 is -24. So I have 49 28ths fighting -24 48ths, or adding a negative because they are on opposite teams. 49 and -24. Positives are going to win by 25. Remember that my denominator is going to stay the same. I would like you to try these two problems. Pause the video, try them, and then check your work with mine. Here are the answers. First, check your answers. If they're the same, then don't check your work. If your answers are different, then go back and check what I did compared to what you did. Now, these look kind of scary because they're mixed numbers. However, remember from our first video of this chapter how to change a mixed number into an improper fraction. Anytime we add, subtract, multiply, or divide, we need improper fractions or regular fractions. We are not going to write our answer or deal with in any shape or form a mixed number. So I have two mixed numbers and I'm going to change them into improper fractions. Before I do that, I see subtraction, so I'm going to indicate that I have a SPY. I'm going to change my subtraction to addition, and then I'm going to change the guy's symbol to the right because he was a SPY. So really, I have negative 2 5/6 plus 1 1/4. All right, the first one, I have a negative 2, so our negative 2 5/6. So I'm going to write my negative down here, but when I change my number into an improper fraction, I don't use my negative, right? It's just telling me that my number is negative. So I'm going to have 2 times 6 plus 5. Notice that I did not write negative 2 times 6. It's just 2. My negative is going to be down here in my answer. So 2 times 6 is 12. Plus 5 is going to be negative 17, and my denominator is going to stay the same. And I'm going to add, I need to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So 4 times 1 plus 1 is 5, and I'm going to leave my denominator the same. When I add fractions, I need a common denominator, so I'm going to use the cake to figure out my least common multiple. Both of these can be divided by 2. I'm going to make an L and multiply everything that's inside of it. So 2 times 3 is 6 times 2 is going to give me a least common denominator or least common multiple as 12. So I have negative 17/6 and I have 5/4. My denominator has to be 12. So in my first one, I need to multiply the top and the bottom by 2 because 6 times 2 is 12. And negative 17 times 2 is going to give me a negative 34. In my bottom fraction, I'm going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3 because 4 times 3 gets me to 12. 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm going to add together negative 34/12 and 15/12. Negative 34 fighting 15. Negatives are going to win by 19, and my denominator stays a 12. There's lots of work, it looks like, and I know that it feels like a lot, so stick with it, right? I would like you to try this one by yourself. When you have tried this one and you have got your final answer, go ahead and press play and compare yours to what I have. So your final answer should be negative 321 over 40. Remember, when we are on integer hill, we have two negatives. They're not going to fight. They're going to join forces. Here are two extra practice questions. In number 12, it's kind of tricky. You're going to have to think about it just a little bit. Pause the video if you're going to do these extra practice, and then press play when you're ready to see the answer. Number 11 should be 7/6, and number 12 should be 11/6. Remember, if you choose not to do the extra practice, that's your choice, but you should have everything else from the video written down.